I'm Kevin Coleman at DuBois_22.
I'm Jeff Bell at For Whom J. Bell Tolls.
And I am Christian Williams at C. Williams NFL, and this is the Devy Royale's YouTube page.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And on this episode of the channel, we've been kind of just covering 2022 quarterbacks. And we looked at Willis and we looked at Sam Howell. And now we are going to our, I wouldn't say our consensus QB3, but just our third quarterback of the series. And that's Matt Corral, Ole Miss quarterback. And, you know, Corral is one of those guys. I was joking about this before we got on. Like, he didn't have these years where like, wow, yeah, he's QB1. He didn't have those games, but he's definitely in the running because I think this class is definitely in the middling part of it. And he's got a big combine coming up and he's got a big pro days coming up. So let's dive into Matt Corral. Christian's going to talk about kind of what his college career looked like and his time at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, so Matt Corral, 6'1", 205, redshirt junior, was really highly recruited. He was a four-star guy. He was the QB4 in 2018, and he had a pretty good composite rating as well from 247 Sports. He didn't really do a whole lot his first couple of years at Ole Miss. He, as you can see on the screen here, 59% completion his first year, actually getting a lot of starting experience. And he didn't even get on the field a whole lot that year. So he's really, I look at him as a 2-year full-time starter, and he's been impressive in those 2 years. 49 touchdowns, just 19 picks, and most of those coming in 2020 when he was kind of just letting it rip. But the good parts about Matt Corral, he's got very nice arm strength. He's got a really nice ability to create outside of structure. So if you go back and watch the Malik Willis episode that we did a couple of videos ago, we talked about how he's really good at creating outside of structure, and there's not a whole lot of guys in this class that can do that. Matt Corral is one of those other guys. Now, in 2021, they kind of said, you know, those 6 interception games, those 14 picks, we can't have that, man. Like, we need you to take care of the football. And it really kind of made him worse. He was too conservative. Yeah. He didn't take a ton of shots. He had the Malik Willis syndrome where he was looking in the right spot, but he just did not want to pull the trigger. So I think with Matt Corral, the main thing that an NFL team is going to have to do is find if there is a balance to that, or if he's just all or nothing, I'm going to take every shot or I'm going to take no shots. That's not going to fly. But Jeff, what do you think of Matt Corral?
Jeff's a hater.
I said before the season. Sorry. you know, I said before the year that he reminded me of Gardner Minshew in terms of the ability to extend plays, having the arm talent. And, you know, he kind of needs to play with his hair on fire a little bit. He's got that personality. He's that type of player that I think that he just needs to get the adrenaline going and kind of be allowed to be himself. And it's interesting that while he cut down on the turnovers, his completion percentage dropped as well. And so while he's being more conservative with the ball, he's not completing as many passes as he was. He does have the tools. And so that's the biggest thing that you look at. And missing the Senior Bowl, I think, you know, we could make the argument that it helped him because of the poor performance of everybody else. But at the same time, he really needs to get in front of NFL scouts. He really needs to get into the room with NFL decision makers, and he needs to see where he stacks up with the rest of this class. He's the biggest unknown right now in the class, the biggest wild card, that he could go out here and have a fantastic combine and shoot up towards the top of the ranks. Or if he has a disappointing performance, you know, we might be talking about a guy that is more Kellen Mond than what we even realized before. And so I think that there's some major concern areas, but there is a lot of potential in this package.
Did you just compare him to Kellen Mond? Did you just do that to my man, Kellen Mond? You just
I'm
threw
just
him.
saying
That's
there's a level of athleticism there. He was a 3rd round pick. You know,
Okay.
he ended up as that early 3rd round pick in our rookie drafts. And, you know, there's certain element of turning the ball over as well. So,
Okay.
you know, I'm sorry to put that on you, Kevin. I know that this is your guy, but,
Okay.
you know, hey, I'm just saying.
First of all, he would okay. I don't want my name to get out here like he's my QB1. Like he was someone that I was higher on coming into the preseason, and I just said also that he needed to cut down his turnovers, which he did. I do think at a detriment to kind of his playmaking ability. So Christian definitely hit that on the head. I mean, I looked at his game, so I went back and watched a couple games. The Alabama game where he was 21 for 29, and I think he clearly said, "I am not going to throw an interception against Alabama," as he threw 5 the previous year, and he didn't. But then they probably could have won that game. Like when you look at it, like if they would have kind of been more aggressive. Lane had some weird play calls down the stretch of that game if you watched it, and I didn't like that. But overall, I mean, he looked okay. And then he flipped to the Arkansas game where they beat him by 1 in that crazy game. And he was they scored 52 points. He was 14 for 21, 287 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he did have 2 rushing touchdowns. And I do think, you know, he rushed for 11 touchdowns last year. Like he's got that functional athleticism too thing. He doesn't have the dual threat thing. He's like Hal in my opinion. But he does have that ability. I like him, but there's nothing I can't defend like that. He doesn't have a lot of stuff on tape. Like I really can't. Like he is completely the unknown, like you talked about. And I don't hate the Gardner Minshew comp. Actually, I hate the Kellen Mond comp. If I hear that again, I'm gonna leave. But I don't hate the Gardner Minshew comp. The Gardner Minshew comp is actually pretty fair. But you know, I think when we watch him on tape and we're seeing what he's doing, the arm strength and the playmaking stuff is there, right? Like that is kind of what pops off to me. Like he can do that against, and we've seen him for the last 2 years. That's where the tape we're watching from. And again, when he plays within himself and they do a lot of play action, like these are the things that you like to see. Now, he wasn't doing that as much last year, and I think it was basically him getting told, like, you got to cut down on the turnovers.
Yeah. And it's interesting because people heading into this season called him SEC Zach Wilson. I saw that a lot.
Yeah.
And it made a lot of sense because he was afraid to hit his checkdowns. He just wanted the big plays. And that was kind of Zach Wilson's thing. And that's actually what got him drafted where he did. And then Lane Kiffin said, man, you can't be doing that. Like, we can't lose games because of you. You are the leader of this team. You need to put us in positions to win. And I think, you know, I do think that hurt his stock a little bit. What we're going to see here is I think he's fast. I think NFL teams are going to like that. I think I don't know that he has the build to be a true dual threat guy, like you're saying. Like, I think he's functionally athletic. I think he's got some speed to him, but if he runs a whole lot, he's going to get knocked out of games and get hurt a lot. But I don't want to harp on the kid too much, but one thing I wish I would have mentioned in the Sam Howell video that we did was the RPO was his friend. You know, he doesn't have full field reads all the time. And it's because that what they do is they do an RPO. It's a quick, easy slant. He hits it. They get chunk plays, and that's how they kind of move the ball this year. Last year was a lot of deep threat, attack vertically. That stuff was good. It was still a lot of RPOs, but more play action than RPO. And I think the further incorporation of RPO also hurt his stock. So for fantasy, I talked about if Howell gets first round capital, where I would be comfortable with him. And that was kind of the 106 to 112 range. That's kind of the sweet spot if he gets drafted in the first round. I think Matt Corral probably gets drafted in the first round, maybe early second. And I think if all things are equal, I would have Corral ahead of Howell for fantasy because he does hit a little higher level of rushing upside in my mind. So Corral, same thing. If he gets first round capital, I think 106 is where I'd start thinking about him. Jeff, is that kind of where you're landing as well?
Yeah, I'm in the same area. Getting that capital is going to be clutch for him. How he performs at the combine is going to be huge. He does have that. You can use him in the RPO. You can get a little bit of rushing floor. He's a guy that, we're high on Jackson Dart going into Ole Miss. And Lane Kiffin's offense was great at FAU. And I think Jackson Dart's going to be a real test for Lane Kiffin if that offense has translated to the SEC or not. And that would, in hindsight, would tell us a lot about Matt Corral. Now, unfortunately, that's not... we're not able to have that conversation point right now.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've mocked into Washington or the Commanders. So I guess they're called the Commanders now. That's going to take me some time. So yeah, I mean, I mocked him there for a little while. I mean, to be honest, like I don't know if he's going to go. He could go that high though. Like if he has a good combine and pro day, I mean, and people buy into the tools. Zach Wilson went number 2. Everybody. So like when we're thinking of kind of where these guys go, I think it's still early in that process. But you're right. Now I will say, I think Washington's offensive coordinator, which I believe is Scott Turner, they talked about his ability to implement RPOs in his kind of with Cam Newton and Heineke and those guys. Maybe he sees it with Corral and say, hey, you have Gibson there and you kind of have those surrounding talents. I hate that franchise. I don't like that franchise as a Cowboy fan, but also as a quarterback developer, like they don't do a very good job of that. But I do think that he fits pretty well there, especially with the weapons around him. And if they add a wide receiver in the 2nd or 3rd round, you got McLaurin there. If Curtis Samuel comes back healthy, I mean, realistically, that would be one of my best fits. I saw him mock to the Steelers. I don't want him to go to the Steelers. I think that would be a bad, terrible fit. But I do think the Washington Commanders could be a good one. As far as draft capital and where he goes, like if he's going to go in the top 15, then I think he's at the 106, 105, in my opinion, for me. But if he's not, then you got a concern. I think that's where he's at with these quarterbacks.
Yeah, I
had him at 32 Detroit in my mock to get that 5th-year option. So, or 31, that last pick in the 1st round.
Yeah. And I was going to say, the last mock I wrote, I had him falling to the 2nd, but also to the Lions because they are loaded with like 4 top 38 picks or something like that. So,
and I don't think that's out of the question. I think he could, and I think that'd be okay for him. I actually wouldn't mind the Lions either. I think they're built around that, and I think that would be a good spot and a bridge quarterback with Goff. So, all right, well, hey, we appreciate you guys. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Check out the Devy Patreon for our Devy Manifesto and everything there. Check out the podcast also, and we appreciate you guys. So, I'm Kevin Coleman at @DuBois_22.
I'm Jeff Bell, for whom J Bell tolls.
And I am Christian Williams at C Williams NFL, and this is the Devy Royale.